Welcome back to Back in the Day History. Today we're exploring one of the most pivotal moments in the life of the legendary Alexander the Great, and his ascension to the throne of Macedonia. We'll be diving deep into the events leading up to this momentous occasion, the challenges he faced as a young king, and the immediate aftermath of his rise to power. So, sit back, relax, and join us as we unravel the intricate details of this fascinating chapter in Alexander's life. To fully understand Alexander's ascension to the throne, we need to take a step back and examine the political landscape of the ancient Greek world. In the 4th century BC, Greece was a patchwork of fiercely independent city-states, often at odds with one another. King Philip II of Macedonia, Alexander's father, sought to unite these city-states under his rule and forge a strong, united Greek front. During his reign, Philip II transformed Macedonia into a formidable military power, expanding its territory and influence through a combination of diplomacy and warfare. He was a skilled commander and an innovative military strategist, known for his use of the phalanx formation and the development of the sarissa, a long spear that gave Macedonian infantry a significant advantage in battle. As Philip II continued his campaign to unite the Greek city-states, Alexander, the young prince, was being groomed for his future role as king. He was given a top-notch education under the guidance of Aristotle and was gradually integrated into the affairs of state. In 338 BC, the Macedonian forces achieved a decisive victory over a coalition of Greek city-states, led by Athens and Thebes, at the Battle of Chaeronea. This victory effectively brought the Greek world under Macedonian control. Alexander played a crucial role in this battle, commanding the elite companion cavalry and displaying his prowess as a military commander. With the Greek world now under his dominion, Philip II began to shift his focus towards a new target, the mighty Persian Empire. In 337 BC, he formed the League of Corinth, a confederation of Greek city-states under Macedonian hegemony, with the ultimate goal of launching a unified campaign against Persia. Just as Philip II's plans for an invasion of Persia were taking shape, tragedy struck. In 336 BC, during the wedding of his daughter Cleopatra to her uncle, King Alexander of Epirus, Philip II was assassinated by one of his own bodyguards, a man named Pausanias. The exact motives behind the assassination remain unclear, with some historians suggesting that Pausanias sought revenge for personal grievances, while others believe that he was part of a larger conspiracy involving rival factions at the Macedonian court, or even foreign powers like Persia or Athens. Regardless of the motive, Philip II's untimely death left a power vacuum in Macedonia, as well as a young and untested successor, Alexander, now just 20 years old. Following the assassination of his father, Alexander faced numerous challenges as he sought to consolidate his power and secure his position as the new king of Macedonia. His first priority was to eliminate any potential rivals to the throne. He quickly ordered the execution of his cousin, Amyntas IV, who had a claim to the throne through his father, Perdiccas III. Alexander also moved to neutralize other potential threats, such as the powerful Lyncestian branch of the Argead dynasty, by eliminating key members and asserting his authority over the remaining family members. Alexander's next challenge was to quell any unrest within the Macedonian ranks. He needed to gain the loyalty and trust of his father's generals, many of whom may have harbored doubts about his ability to rule. Displaying remarkable charisma and leadership, Alexander won over the majority of the military elite by assuring them of his commitment to the ideals and ambitions set forth by his father, and by demonstrating his own tactical acumen on the battlefield. News of Philip II's death and the sudden rise of a young and untested ruler in Macedonia prompted a wave of rebellion and unrest throughout the Greek city-states. Many saw this as an opportunity to break free from Macedonian control and reclaim their independence. Alexander, however, was determined to maintain the unity his father had worked so hard to establish. One of the first rebellions Alexander faced was in the city of Thebes, which had long been a thorn in the side of Macedonian hegemony. Determined to make an example of the rebellious city, Alexander swiftly marched his forces to Thebes and crushed the uprising in a brutal display of force. The city was razed to the ground, its inhabitants either killed or sold into slavery, and its treasures seized. This ruthless act sent a clear message to the rest of the Greek world. Alexander was not to be trifled with. With his position as king of Macedonia secure and the Greek city-states firmly under his control, Alexander began to look towards the future. Like his father before him, he saw the potential for greatness in a unified Greek campaign against the Persian Empire. In 334 BC, just 2 years after his ascension to the throne, Alexander launched his invasion of Persia with an army of over 40,000 soldiers. This marked the beginning of an epic campaign that would not only bring the mighty Persian Empire to its knees, but also see Alexander's empire stretch from the shores of the Mediterranean to the borders of India. The first significant encounter between Alexander's forces and the Persian Empire took place at the Granicus River in modern-day Turkey. The Persian army, led by local satraps, governors, and reinforced by Greek mercenaries, sought to defend their territory against the invaders. Alexander's forces, however, were superior in both tactics and morale. Alexander led his companion cavalry across the river, with his infantry phalanx following closely behind. The Persians attempted to hold their ground, but Alexander's cavalry charged through their lines, while the disciplined Macedonian phalanx engaged the enemy infantry. The battle ended in a resounding victory for Alexander, who suffered minimal casualties compared to the heavy losses sustained by the Persians. In 333 BC, Alexander faced the Persian king Darius III himself at the Battle of Issus. Darius had assembled a massive army, potentially numbering over 100,000 soldiers, to confront the Macedonian threat. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Alexander's forces managed to outmaneuver the Persians and exploit their vulnerabilities. At Issus, Alexander once again employed his tried and true tactics, using his elite companion cavalry to deliver a devastating charge on the Persian left flank. Meanwhile, the Macedonian phalanx engaged the Persian infantry and Greek mercenaries in the center. Darius, witnessing the collapse of his left flank, panicked and fled the battlefield, leaving his army to be routed by the determined Macedonians. This crushing defeat marked a turning point in the war, as the balance of power shifted decisively in favor of Alexander. The most famous and decisive battle of Alexander's campaign against Persia took place at Gaugamela in 331 BC. Darius had regrouped and assembled an even larger army, with some estimates suggesting that it numbered over 200,000 soldiers. The Persian king had also chosen the battlefield carefully, ensuring that his vast numbers and the presence of his formidable war chariots could be fully utilized. Alexander, however, was not deterred by the odds stacked against him. He employed a brilliant strategy that involved drawing the Persian cavalry away from their center by feigning retreats and launching surprise counterattacks. This created gaps in the Persian lines, which Alexander's forces exploited to great effect. Simultaneously, Alexander led a cavalry charge directly towards Darius, forcing the Persian king to flee the battlefield once more. The remaining Persian forces were then surrounded and defeated, effectively sealing the fate of the Persian Empire. The Battle of Gaugamela was a masterclass in tactical genius, showcasing Alexander's ability to adapt and overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Alexander's journey through Egypt marked a pivotal point in his campaign. In 331 BC, he founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, which would become one of the most significant cities in the ancient world. This occurred after he had successfully conquered Asia Minor and Syria, and before his decisive victory against the Persian king Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela later that same year. The city was named after Alexander himself and served as a testament to his ambition and vision. The strategic location of Alexandria made it a vital center of trade and commerce between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Its harbor allowed for easy access to the Mediterranean Sea, and it soon became a bustling metropolis, attracting people from diverse cultures and backgrounds. The city was designed by the architect Dinocrates, following a grid plan that was typical of Hellenistic urban planning. Alexandria was not only meant to be a center of commerce but also a hub of learning and culture. Alexander's vision for the city included grand public buildings, temples, and other monuments that would showcase the wealth and prestige of his empire. One of the most iconic institutions of Alexandria was the Great Library, which was founded by Ptolemy Isoter, one of Alexander's former generals and the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. The library was intended to be a repository of knowledge, housing an extensive collection of scrolls and manuscripts from across the known world. The Great Library of Alexandria became a center of intellectual and scholarly pursuits, attracting some of the greatest minds of the ancient world, including the mathematician Euclid, the astronomer Eratosthenes, and the philosopher Philo of Alexandria. Scholars and researchers from various disciplines came to the library to study, exchange ideas, and contribute to the wealth of knowledge preserved within its walls. The Great Library of Alexandria was not without its share of misfortune. The most tragic event in the library's history was the devastating fire that consumed a significant portion of its collection. The exact details of the fire remain uncertain, but it is widely believed to have occurred during the Roman conquest of Alexandria in 48 BC, during the civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. It is said that during the fighting, fires broke out in the city, eventually reaching the library and causing extensive damage. Some accounts suggest that as many as 40,000 scrolls and manuscripts were lost in the blaze. This tragic event marked the beginning of the decline of the Great Library, as much of its invaluable knowledge was forever lost to the flames. Following the victory at Gargantua, Alexander continued his conquest of Persia, capturing the capital city of Persepolis and eventually bringing the entire empire under his rule. The fall of the Persian Empire was a monumental achievement, and its territories were incorporated into Alexander's ever-expanding realm. The significance of Alexander's conquest of Persia cannot be overstated. Not only did it reshape the political landscape of the ancient world, but it also led to a profound cultural exchange between the Greeks and the peoples of the conquered territories. This fusion of cultures gave rise to the Hellenistic period, which saw remarkable advancements in art, science, philosophy, and architecture. Alexander's military strategies and tactics during the Persian campaign continue to be studied and admired by military historians and enthusiasts alike. His ability to consistently outmaneuver and outfight larger and better-equipped armies demonstrated the importance of skill, innovation, and leadership on the battlefield. Additionally, his capacity to motivate and inspire his troops played a crucial role in his numerous victories, as they remained loyal and committed to his cause throughout the campaign. The conquest of Persia also cemented Alexander's status as one of history's most legendary figures. His ambition, determination, and tactical genius are still remembered and celebrated more than 2 millennia after his death. Although his empire ultimately fractured and dissolved after his untimely demise, the impact of his conquests and the legacy of his rule continue to resonate in the collective memory of human history. With the Persian Empire firmly under his control, Alexander the Great turned his attention to the east, marching through Central Asia and into the Indian subcontinent. During this time, he also began to focus on his personal life, including his marriage and relationships, as well as the administration and management of his vast empire. In 328 BC, Alexander's campaign led him to the city of Samarkand, in present-day Uzbekistan. It was here that a dramatic and tragic event unfolded, highlighting the increasing tension and volatility within Alexander's inner circle. One evening, during a banquet in Samarkand, Alexander and his close friend and officer, Black Cletus, became embroiled in a heated argument. Cletus had been a loyal companion to Alexander since his early days and had even saved his life at the Battle of Granicus. However, the tensions between the two men reached a boiling point during this banquet. As the festivities continued, the attendees engaged in toasts and praises to Alexander, some even comparing him to a god. Cletus, possibly intoxicated and emboldened by the atmosphere, began to criticize Alexander's adoption of Persian customs and his apparent disregard for the traditions of their Macedonian homeland. He went so far as to insult Alexander's father, Philip Roman II, claiming that his accomplishments were more significant than those of his son. Enraged by Cletus's words, Alexander lost control and, in a fit of anger, grabbed a nearby spear and struck Cletus, killing him instantly. This impulsive act would haunt Alexander for the rest of his life, as he was overcome with guilt and sorrow for having taken the life of his dear friend. The year 327 BC marked a significant turning point in Alexander's personal life and his military campaign. While in the region of Bactria, in modern-day Afghanistan, he encountered and fell in love with Roxane, the daughter of a local nobleman. Alexander's decision to marry Roxane was not only a romantic gesture, but also a strategic move aimed at solidifying alliances and fostering unity between his Greek and Eastern subjects. Roxane was renowned for her beauty and intelligence, and her marriage to Alexander signaled his commitment to the integration of various cultures within his empire. This union was a symbol of the merging of Greek and Eastern traditions, a theme that would become increasingly prominent as Alexander's campaign continued. Following his marriage to Roxane, Alexander set his sights on the conquest of India. This ambitious endeavor would prove to be one of the most challenging and arduous campaigns of his career. The march to India took Alexander and his army through treacherous terrain, including vast deserts and the formidable Hindu Kush mountain range. The decision to conquer India was fueled by Alexander's insatiable appetite for conquest and his desire to reach the ends of the known world. However, this final chapter of his military campaign would test the limits of his endurance, his leadership, and his ability to maintain the loyalty and morale of his troops. Alexander's Indian campaign would be one of the most challenging of his career. In 326 BC, he faced one of his most formidable opponents, King Porus of the Paurava kingdom, who ruled a region in modern-day Pakistan. The two armies met at the river Hydaspes, and what followed was a fierce and strategically fascinating battle. Alexander used his tactical genius to outmaneuver Porus, who had positioned his forces to protect a river crossing. By employing a series of deceptive maneuvers and crossing the river under the cover of darkness, Alexander managed to surprise and outflank Porus's army. The battle was fierce, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. However, Alexander's forces ultimately emerged victorious, largely due to their superior tactics and the use of their famed companion cavalry. King Porus fought valiantly, but he was ultimately captured and brought before Alexander. In a rare display of mercy and admiration, Alexander was impressed by Porus's courage and stature, and he decided to grant him his freedom, allowing him to continue ruling his kingdom as a vassal of the Macedonian Empire. However, what is often overlooked is that Alexander's union with Roxane was not his only marriage. In an effort to further solidify his relationships with conquered territories and unite his vast empire, Alexander arranged a series of mass marriages for his officers and himself in Susa in 324 BC. The Susa weddings were a grand and elaborate affair, with Alexander marrying two Persian princesses, Stateira Roman II, the daughter of Darius Roman III, and Parysatis Roman II, the daughter of Artaxerxes Roman III. This was a bold political move, as it represented Alexander's intention to merge the ruling dynasties of the conquered Persian Empire with his own Macedonian lineage. These unions were more than just political alliances. They were a symbolic gesture of unity between the Greek and Persian cultures. Alexander encouraged his officers and soldiers to follow his example and marry Persian women, resulting in a total of around 10,000 weddings taking place during the Susa celebrations. In 326 BC, Alexander the Great's forces met the Paurava kingdom, led by King Porus, in the region of modern-day Pakistan. The battlefield was set along the banks of the river Hydaspes, which presented a formidable natural barrier. Aware that he needed to outsmart Porus to achieve victory, Alexander developed a cunning plan to deceive the enemy and secure a strategic advantage. To keep Porus guessing and spread out his forces, Alexander ordered his troops to build multiple campfires along the riverbank, simulating the presence of a much larger army. Concurrently, he sent small detachments to probe the enemy defenses and identify a suitable crossing point. After days of reconnaissance, Alexander discovered a crossing point about 17 miles upstream from the main camp. This location was concealed by a bend in the river and a small island, providing the perfect cover for his forces. Taking advantage of a stormy night, Alexander left the majority of his troops at the main camp to maintain the illusion of a substantial force, while he personally led a select group of soldiers, including the elite companion cavalry, across the river. The crossing was dangerous and challenging, with the troops struggling against the strong currents and the raging storm. As dawn broke, Alexander's main force had successfully crossed the river and assembled on the opposite bank. Porus, caught off guard by the unexpected maneuver, scrambled to respond. He dispatched a portion of his forces, led by his son, to intercept Alexander's advance. In the ensuing clash, Alexander's companion cavalry charged the enemy cavalry and infantry, causing heavy casualties and forcing them to retreat. Porus's son was killed in the engagement, delivering a significant blow to the Porava kingdom's morale. With the initial skirmish won, Alexander continued to press his advantage. Porus reorganized his troops and moved to confront Alexander's forces. The main battle commenced, with Porus's powerful war elephants and chariots proving to be a significant challenge for Alexander's infantry phalanxes. Alexander employed a series of swift, coordinated attacks to keep Porus's forces off balance. The Macedonian archers targeted the elephant drivers, causing the beasts to panic and trample their own troops. Meanwhile, the agile companion cavalry outflanked the enemy, targeting the vulnerable infantry and archers. As the battle raged on, the tide gradually turned in Alexander's favor. The disciplined Macedonian phalanxes held firm against the charging elephants and chariots, while the relentless attacks of the companion cavalry sowed chaos and confusion among Porus's troops. Eventually, the Porava forces were overwhelmed and King Porus was captured. Alexander, impressed by Porus's courage and resilience, offered him a place in his administration, allowing him to govern his former kingdom as a satrap. The Battle of River Hydaspes took a significant toll on Alexander's forces, however, and it was during this battle that his beloved horse, Bucephalus, died either from battle wounds or exhaustion. This was a devastating loss for Alexander, who had ridden Bucephalus since his youth and considered him a loyal companion. In honor of Bucephalus, Alexander founded a city named Bucephala at the site of the battle. In 324 BC, after a long and grueling campaign in India, Alexander's army arrived in the ancient city of Opis, located near modern-day Baghdad in Iraq. The soldiers were exhausted, having marched and fought for nearly a decade. Tensions had been simmering for some time, with many yearning to return to their homes and families. At Opis, Alexander decided to discharge thousands of his aging and wounded soldiers. He also planned to integrate Persian troops into his army, a move that was unpopular with the Macedonian soldiers who viewed the Persians as a conquered people and unworthy of serving alongside them. The situation reached a boiling point when Alexander announced the integration of Persian troops and the appointment of Persian nobles to high-ranking positions within the army. The Macedonian soldiers, feeling betrayed and disregarded, openly revolted against their commander. Alexander, shocked by the insubordination, quickly took action. He executed the ringleaders of the mutiny and delivered a powerful speech, expressing his disappointment and reminding his troops of the glory and riches they had achieved under his leadership. The speech had its intended effect, and the mutiny subsided, with the soldiers tearfully begging for forgiveness. Following the events at Opis, Alexander's focus shifted to consolidating his vast empire. He embarked on ambitious construction projects, celebrated weddings between his officers and Persian nobility, attempted to foster a sense of unity between the various cultures under his rule. In 323 BC, Alexander returned to the city of Babylon, a thriving metropolis that had become the administrative center of his empire. Despite ominous signs and warnings from local priests, Alexander chose to remain in the city and continue his plans for further conquest and expansion. As Alexander's campaign stretched on, signs of his own downfall began to emerge. His ambition and desire for conquest remained insatiable, but the physical and mental toll on him and his soldiers grew increasingly evident. Discontent brewed within the ranks, while Alexander himself appeared more reckless and paranoid, causing rifts between him and his closest companions. Despite his deteriorating condition, Alexander continued to make plans for further conquest, neglecting to address the pressing issue of succession. The lack of a designated heir was a glaring oversight, considering the vastness of his empire and the potential for chaos in the event of his untimely death. Alexander's refusal to appoint a successor may have been driven by his belief in his own invincibility and his desire to maintain power until the very end. He systematically eliminated potential rivals, including his half-brother Hideus and his cousin Amyntas Roman IV, fearing they could challenge his rule. Alexander's stubborn refusal to address the matter of succession came to a head when he fell gravely ill in Babylon on an early June night in 323 BC. As his condition worsened, His officers and friends gathered at his bedside, anxious to know who would take the reins of the empire upon his death. Legend has it that, when asked to whom he would leave his empire, Alexander whispered, "To the strongest," setting the stage for a brutal struggle for power. His death on June 10th or 11th, 323 BC, marked the beginning of a tumultuous period known as the Wars of the Diadochi, in which Alexander's former generals and officers fought bitterly for control of his vast empire. The exact cause of Alexander's death remains a subject of debate among historians, with theories ranging from natural causes, such as typhoid fever or malaria, to the possibility of poisoning. Regardless of the cause, his untimely demise left his empire in a precarious state, as he had no clear heir or succession plan in place. Alexander's sudden death plunged his vast empire into a period of uncertainty and chaos. He had managed to conquer an enormous swath of territory stretching from Greece to Egypt and from Asia Minor to India, but he had not laid the groundwork for a stable and lasting administration. In the power vacuum that followed his death, Alexander's former generals and companions, known as the Diadochi, began to fight amongst themselves for control of his vast dominions. This struggle led to the fragmentation of Alexander's empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms, including the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in Persia and Mesopotamia, and the Antigonic dynasty in Macedonia. In the years that followed, Alexander's once united empire fractured into separate kingdoms ruled by his former commanders. The unity and cultural fusion he had strived to achieve during his reign quickly dissipated, leaving a lasting impact on the political landscape of the ancient world. Despite the division and eventual decline of his empire, Alexander's legacy endures. His conquests and the Hellenistic period that followed had a profound impact on the cultures and peoples of the ancient world, leading to a remarkable period of cultural exchange and intellectual development. Alexander's military genius, ambition, and the sheer scale of his achievements continue to inspire and captivate historians, scholars, and students of history alike. Although his empire did not survive the test of time, the memory of Alexander the Great and the indelible mark he left on the course of human history will never be forgotten. We hope you enjoyed this immersive journey into the world of Alexander the Great, and thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you in the next episode of Back in the Day as we continue to explore the captivating stories of history.